everyone. My name is Mohammed. I'm a solutions engineer here with ThirdWeb. I'm here with Phil, who's one of our lead engineers on the engine team, which we'll talk about here in a short while. Let's go ahead and get started. Before we get started, I'm curious. So, who here is working on, actively working on a Web3 project, whether it's like today or outside of this room? Just show of hands. Okay, so most people. And I'm curious where on the stack people lie. So if you have like front-end skills, again, hands up. Okay, what about like back-end Web 2 skills? Okay, and what about like Solidity / Ether / WAGMI / ThirdWeb? Okay, fewer and fewer. Very cool, very interesting. Good to see. So ThirdWeb, I think what we offer in terms of the tool set is actually perfect for the majority of the people here. So what are we? We are a complete Web3 development framework. Our product values is permissionless, owned by you, no vendor lock-ins. Everything we have is highly composable. Bring your own infrastructure, rely on us to spin up the infrastructure for you. You own everything you do. We don't take a cut of like your contracts or your calls or anything. And it's all open source. You can host the stuff yourself forever for free, or you can pay us to manage like your whatever instance for you. And we live across, like we're probably the most horizontal company out there. Like we touch every aspect of the stack, from building to launching to managing. What you want to do, we do it all. Now this much less pretty slide I put together, and this is kind of how I think about kind of a Web3 app in general. Like I do a lot of these calls with like businesses trying to get in, and most of the use cases fall into like these three categories, right? And this is from like a user experience perspective, not necessarily like the developer experience. But first we have wallets, right? User onboarding. We got to get people an account, some sort of identity on your system. So we have a full set of tools here, like from pre-built like UI components that you can drop in to like account abstraction infrastructure to like email and social wallets, all that with like few lines of code. Fiat onboarding, we have a checkout product to help your users get their cash into the system and start interacting. And then finally contracts and contract interactions, which is actually where most of y'all as developers will live. So from deploying contracts to having like a Solidity SDK to take our existing contracts and modify them as you need, to publishing those contracts and then interacting with them finally. And that's, we have two things. I listed Engine here. It's our API service to interact with the blockchain. Super powerful. It abstracts away some of that Web3 complexity, like gas estimation, transaction retries, nonce management, all the stuff that makes developing on blockchain really challenging. Engine handles for you through an API interface. You just hit a mint endpoint, and then your transaction gets queued up by us, then it gets sent to the blockchain, and then it gets mined, and we send you like events every time something like that happens. You can register webhooks, etc. So what we're going to be doing today is going through like a basic flow. We're going to deploy a dApp in like 15 minutes, and then we can like wander around and just chat with people and get to know like what your developer experience is, which would be really exciting for us. So when we're considering like the developer flow, it kind of actually goes the other direction. First, we start with our contracts, right? So we have, if we go to the main ThirdWeb website and we go to get started, after connecting our wallet, now I disabled my MetaMask from reading all my pages. So sometimes I need to do a refresh. There we go. We go to our deploy contracts page. It's like a smart contract marketplace that you don't pay any money for. We have them categorized by popular, NFTs, marketplaces, public infrastructure for smart wallets, staking, DAOs, and governance. Anything the light touches in the Web3 world, we have some sort of pre-built contract for. Most are written by us. Some are written by like partner companies. Anyone can contribute to this to this marketplace, and nearly all of our contracts are audited. And deployment is as easy as you'd expect. You click on the thing, you can read more about it, and then Deploy, pretty straightforward. I won't go through this actual deployment process. It's just filling out some fields like adding your image, etc. The interesting part here is the network. We support all EVM chains, public, private. You can add your own custom network. Everything with Ava, you know, we're in the subnet world, right? So very easy to, after you've deployed your subnet with Ava, to configure your network right here and deploy directly to whatever chain you're working on. After you deploy, you get an interface like this. We have a nice little dashboard. I've already gone ahead and did a couple test mints just to make sure my app works. As you can see, there's a couple mints here, but we give you all the essential bits, right? You know, you can mint anything, manage permissions, change the settings on your contract, integrate payments, look at basic analytics, code snippets, Explore, like the whole suite. So we've kind of gone through step one now, which is deploy our contract, right? We've got our main smart contract, and now we need to go on to the next stage, which is how to interact with the smart contract.
I'll kind of jump in there.
Yeah,
so that page that Mohammed showed, if you've all deployed a contract or even use other contracts, you know that visibility, like having an overview of what's going on with your contract, like events that have happened. We even have analytics on, you know, how many wallets in the last week have been interacting with your contract. Having an overview of your contract is kind of hard, and you don't really want to look at raw transactions on, you know, Snowtrace or Etherscan or something. That's the best we have today, right? So with our dashboard, not only do you have some of this analytics, but even if you go to the Explorer tab, section, yeah. There's even this section where you can actually interact with your contract. You don't need to write raw curl commands or raw JS ethers commands to read, like just do a random read. Just, I don't know, read the name or something. Like this just executes it from your connected, or not even wallet, it just calls the contract. And contract URI, that's the output. So just debugging your contract, figuring out, oh, did something deploy wrong? Did I not set the right setting here? It's just so much easier on this interface. Like we use this all the time, even internally when debugging things.
Absolutely. So we've got a contract. Step two, we want to interact with our contract in some way. This is where Engine comes into play. I already touched a little bit on Engine. Phil, what's your, you talked to Engine before.
Yeah, zoom in on that photo. So this is the simplest way I can break it down. But so if you've all interacted with the blockchain before, maybe with Ethers or VM or something, there's a lot of, it's easy enough to do it maybe once. It's a simple call, you get a response back. When you start getting into something more production ready, you start having to think about scale. And what happens when you need to send 100 requests at a time? Your one wallet's not gonna wait until each one is done. And then when you want to start parallelizing things, you start having to worry about nonces and how those can get stuck if you just count wrong. And when you're starting to deal with blockchain, you're starting to deal with blockchain reliability, RPC reliability. As we know, those aren't always 100% reliable. You get sometimes bad responses or incorrect responses from RPCs. So how do you retry those? Sometimes gas goes up. That's usually out of your control, and you have to replay a transaction with higher gas. This is stuff that every production-ready application has to think about, has to worry about, has to build. This is stuff that we've developed expertise in our checkouts product, and so we've open-sourced Engine. It's the WebDev/Engine. You can find it on GitHub. It's an open-source project where you can self-host it or we can cloud host it for you. That handles a lot of this back-end complexity for you. So if you think about, and I think Mohammed's going to show you in a bit, interacting, like let's say you want to just deploy a contract or mint a token on an NFT contract. That is one REST call now with Engine. And you can just trust that it'll work. And if something's wrong, RPC is not working, or you have high throughput, you can just trust that Engine will queue those up, send those across. So it really just simplifies all of that Web3 complexity down to REST calls. And that's something that a lot of Web2 and Web3 developers are more comfortable with and familiar with.
Beautiful. And I think one of the most powerful pages we have on here is just the full API reference. You can, here what you see is that we have a number of, endpoints, that are kind of built around the pre-built contracts that is there feedback? We're good? Cool. You can see that we have a number of endpoints that are kind of built around the contracts that we have. But in addition to that, we have this generic contract read and write endpoint that allows you to call any function on any contract on any VM chain, right? So you can start to see the power of what's possible here. And what we're going to do today.
Yeah, just taking a look at the interface. This hopefully looks familiar. What do you want to call? What do you want to pass it? That's all you need to send, and the backend wallet that you call it from.
And the magic, and if we look at the response here, this is where kind of the magic of the scalability that Phil's talking about really comes into play. So anytime you get, like a 200 response from Engine, you're actually getting back a QID. And then what you can do with that QID is go to our transaction endpoint, and you can get transaction status. So here you get, all the juicy bits. That did not look better. You get all the juicy bits of what's going on with your transaction right here. And the kind of important bit is the status right here, where it's mined. So if we go to like our webhooks here, you can either pull the endpoint and wait until the transaction moves from queued to sent to mined, or you can register some webhooks and have an endpoint hit when these things happen. And so typically, a transaction, the happy path, it goes from queued to sent to mined. And the error transaction exists because there's some things that are kind of out of the API's control, like if you run out of gas in your wallet, right? That's going to be an error that we can't solve for you. So this exists the error transaction exists for those reasons. But the promise that Engine's making is that we're going to queue everything up for you, and unless something like you running out of gas, goes on, if it's like a blockchain related error, then we're going to handle that for you. We'll re-queue it, we'll redo the nonce, we'll re-estimate gas. All that happens, without you having to worry about a thing. All you're doing is hitting one endpoint and waiting for the status to change. Pretty cool stuff. So let's try it out. Now, one of the cool things here is, as Phil pointed out, we have this Explorer here for the contracts. We also have, actually, let me see. Pull up this one. I have two different wallets going on here.
And I should have mentioned the backend wallet piece. So
please do.
Whether it's cloud hosted or it's self-hosted, these are your app's backend wallets. We don't own it. We don't have any way to transact on it. So the goal is that you're bringing your own wallets and funding them. You're not using some shared pool with a bunch of other customers. That's kind of scary, and you don't want that. So we have backend wallets. But another beautiful part about Engine is you're not dealing with private keys directly. Like, you're not passing private keys into the API request. Your app shouldn't be touching private keys, period. So a common pattern that we use in our own internal tooling is we have AWS KMS wallets. We have a AWS API key that lets us interact with that KMS wallet. And then we have these access tokens that Engine lets you generate access tokens. If you just hop to the permissions tab real quick. Lets you generate these access tokens. Think of them as your basic API key. So now your services or your developers can have access tokens. And let's say you have a contractor or an intern who's leaving at the end of the week. You don't want them to have access to your private keys ever. So you have access keys or access tokens for them, or maybe they're admins and they can manage it from this dashboard. When they leave your company, you can just remove them, and you don't have that risk of we have to rotate every single wallet we have now because that intern saw our private keys. This is the problem we have had and did in the past. It was painful. So these are just learnings that we've had and kind of built it into the design of Engine.
Yeah, and here you can see a lot of the management features that Phil described. We have a relayer tab because gasless is the way now. If you're using account abstraction, you're probably going to be using a paymaster. If you're not, you need a relayer. So you hit a relayer endpoint, you can generate your own relayer on any chain as at will. And now, just like we had the Explorer in for contracts interactions, we have Explorer here for Engine interactions as well. So if we are thinking about doing like a mint here, it's as easy as clicking trying it out, and then passing in whatever the parameters here are, and we can mint it directly. So let's do it here. Let me actually go back to this. Let me grab our I think it's just avax-fuji, but let me double check that. There, avalanche-fuji. So we'll pass this in here.
And just like the Explorer tab you saw with the contracts, this Explorer tab isn't just API documentation. It's a functional try it now. It actually does stuff, which is actually nice. Again, when we debug stuff all the time, we're actually trying to call our contract to do stuff. And so this is actually just a web interface that lets you do that in a more just manageable way, because you have all the references next to you. You're just filling in fields and then pressing a button.
Put in our contract address.
So like a common thing that we might do is transfer funds from one wallet to another, because that's a common thing you might want to just do just one time. And finding the right code or the right curl command for that is a little bit annoying. This is just an easier way to do that.
Let me go back here. I forgot to grab my backend wallet address.
Oh, it's in the backend section.
I just grabbed it.
Okay.
Go back to try it out again. We'll put this in here.
So you'll see the parameters that Mohammed's passing in. It's the chain, the backend wallet address you want to use to execute this, because all writes need to come from some wallet, the contract address he's calling, and then the parameters that he will be sending to this. These are parameters of the SDK. So you're not doing raw ethers calls with this interface. You could, that was another endpoint, but this endpoint is a higher level, more focused interface where there's kind of a nicer input structure that is much more readable. So here, Mohammed's minting an NFT, so you're just passing in the receiver who should be receiving this. You're passing in some metadata about this NFT. So you can really imagine this is a really useful thing for something like an airdrop. Let's say every time someone follows you on Twitter, you want to send them an NFT, then you just have to somehow hook up that Twitter follow to Engine, make this call, and then that will do an airdrop every time you call it.
Cool, and I'm going to leave this. One really other nice thing just to point out here is, let me go here to, I think it's in the settings. We give you a lot of this infrastructure like out of the box, like IPFS storage, very easy drag and drop interface that gives you your IPFS hash right out of the gate. So this one, for example, I think is the one we're going with. We'll pass it into our call. Actually,
while you look for that, actually, I wanted to talk about, Mohammed just showed the IPFS piece. So if you're all building a Web3 app, you've all probably had to go find an RPC provider. You've all probably had to go and find an IPFS provider. You've all probably had to find wallets. If you're doing smart accounts, a smart account, and maybe a paymaster providers, bundlers, relayers. If you're writing contracts, you're looking at libraries and piecing things together. One of the beautiful parts about ThirdWeb owning all of those pieces is not only can we provide a very tightly integrated experience, but our SDKs and our interfaces become more streamlined as well. Notice nowhere here did we ask to have you enter your RPC URL or your IPFS URL. That we have that. It's built into ThirdWeb stack. So as long as you have an API key, which you will have to provide to the engine or the SDK, that one API key powers all of that infrastructure we just talked about. You're not talking to 7 different companies, signing up for 7 different growth plans, reading 7 different documentation, and figuring out how to string them together.
Cool. So let's execute this transaction. We got back our queue ID. I'm going to really quickly try to go back to the overview here so we can view this was queued. Now it's moved on to sent. And now we're at mined.
Yeah, so I like this page a lot because, and this is the part I really like because I built it, but it's a real-time dashboard of transactions that Engine has sent. And if you've been sending stuff, visibility in Web3, observability in Web3 is really hard. Like Etherscan's the best we have, and blockchain explorers, but it only gives you so much. And when something doesn't make it to mempool, you just don't see it. You don't know, they only see what's made it to the chain, right? And so here you can see sometimes things failed, and maybe this was out of gas, maybe we sent the wrong parameters.
Yeah, that one failed because I didn't have minting permissions on the contract.
Why don't you click into it, actually? Yeah. So this is something we added recently, and we're going to make this part a little better, but this is a full detail of everything that happened with that transaction, and here you can expand to see actually what happened. Right now, there's this kind of, unfortunately, kind of hairy blob, but you can kind of see here, missing role. Account missing role. And that was because, actually, exactly what Mohammed just said. he tried to mint with a backend wallet that didn't have the right role for this contract. How many hours would that have taken you to debug using your own tools? So, and we're doing some work to actually clean that up, so we'll just throw that error message right out in front. But these other ones succeeded. So you can see that succeeded. There's a transaction hash. If you click into that transaction hash, you'll see it's there.
Yep, we're here. We can go open up that transaction hash. We see the success. We see the NFT is minted, and we can. Let's see. Is it? Oh, not that one. Then if we look at the actual contract, let me open this up in a new tab, or is it over here? Yeah, it's this one. Got too many tabs. If we go down to the actual contract, look at our NFTs, we see the third one, sweet demo, Ava is the best, and into the wallet. So that's it in terms of contracts and contract interactions. And now just for a bit of an exposure to like the other aspects of how to actually build a dApp, we'll quickly go over some of the other ThirdWeb tooling that we have. So it's always nice to have like some boilerplate to get started with. You can use the npx ThirdWeb create command that we have here. It gives you the basics of whether you want to create an app, start with a smart contract, or a specific type of contract known as dynamic smart contract, which is like an upgradable smart contract. By the way, we're coming out with like a new standard for like a hook-based contract, which is really exciting, and I think is going to kind of change how contracts are developed. But you pick your app, you name the app, you pick your chain, and then framework, language, and then it spins up the app for you. Now we're not gonna wait for this to happen. I've already kind of used this to generate like a boilerplate, and I've added some code. So we're just gonna go over what that code looks like. So thinking again back to this here of what's next. Now we've talked about contracts and contract interactions. Let's talk about user onboarding. That's typically the first thing someone needs to do. They need to create or connect a wallet. So what tools do we have here? If we go to our connect page, this is a nice little playground that really shows the power of like this connect modal that we have. It's a pre-built UI component. It's like one line of code to import it into your app. You can select the wallets you want to accept. Star whatever recommended thing that you want to flag for users. Email and social logins, local wallets, and then finally just the implementation. We've got a ThirdWeb provider where you need to pass in your active chain and client ID, and then you just tell it which supported wallets and auth options you want to support. That's it. You've now configured your app to be like powered by ThirdWeb, and all you need to do to create this little connect wallet button here that gives you everything you see, which by the way, this is completely customizable, both appearance and theming and branding. You can do whatever you need to there. But this connect wallet button with all this is literally this, the configuration. You pass in what you want to support, and then one component, the connect wallet component, right? And we've got these like UI components for a lot of things across the board. This is, I think, to me, like one of the fastest ways to get going is using these like components here. I mean, just thinking about like how to display an NFT on your site, right? There's like 8 steps, 20 minutes of work. You're using like 2 or 3 different libraries minimum, and it's just a heavy lift. Here, all you do is you import, the component. And that's it, pass in the metadata. How do you get the metadata? Well, we've got a couple hooks for that as well. We've got a use contract hook, the use NFT to pull in data from that contract where you can grab the metadata, and then you just pass in the metadata into the component, and you're good, you're set. So that's the wallet experience. So let's go to the app that we have. Here, as you see, we have this, the basic provider, like we mentioned. We pass in the active chain, the supported wallets, And then we're nesting our actual app with inside this ThirdWeb provider. The ThirdWeb provider is wrapped around our actual app. And we go down here, and this app is actually really, really small, right? We have like a thank you, and then we're using this use wallet hook up here somewhere. Use address. Where do we go? Here we go. We use address to grab the user's wallet address. Just to conditionally render a button, like making sure that they're actually connected before we render this button. And this button, we're going to use Engine. So this is just like a regular old button, right? It's a button that on click, we call this claim function. What does this claim function do? This is just an API call. We're hitting the endpoint with a post. We're passing in the wallet address, handling the response.
Yeah, if you could stay here. If you scroll up to the top to the provider, again, I just want to call out, notice you're not passing in all this extra configuration on your RPCs, your IPFS, whatnot. The only thing you need is the client ID, which is, you get that in the dashboard. That's kind of your public API key. And the chain you want, and some configuration. So for all the stuff Mohammed just showed, like you want embedded wallets, that's this thing right here. Now you have embedded wallets. That's it. You want MetaMask support, all these other wallet support, that's all built in there. And then you want that nice rendered connect wallet button that has the built-in like send and receive functionality, network switching, it shows your balance. We're adding a bunch of stuff more to that too, so it's continuously evolving. That's this line right there. And so that's just to show a design philosophy that we have, and I think Mohammed covered it earlier, which is we want devs to get started quickly. Like that is, Web3 is hard enough, you're all building really complicated and sophisticated apps. We just want people to get started quickly. And I want to make it clear too that doesn't mean that you'll hit a ceiling. Like outside of all this simplicity, there's plenty of customization that you can do. Like that entire modal, you can customize it to your heart's content. So the beauty is it's both quick to get started and it has a ceiling that probably has all the functionality you'll need. Like we rarely encounter a customer that hits a ceiling where maybe there's something that the component can't do and they have to kind of fork it or do something else. Generally, it's been very, very powerful and robust enough for all the use cases that we've seen.
Yeah, and in addition to the like the UI components, we offer you like all the hooks and all the methods that you would need to like create that button yourself if you want to do some sort of like creative or custom implementation. Like it's all there for you like in our library. So just to follow this logic through, we have our button on the click. We're calling the claim. We're hitting this hit these endpoints. So let's look at this route. All we're doing here is we're pulling in some environmental variables, doing a quick check, making sure that we have all the variables we need. We're grabbing the wallet address that we passed into the request, and from here, this is just a fetch call. This is what every developer knows how to use. We pass in a couple headers here, including your secret key, your wallet address, and then from here, this is just exactly what we did using the Explor. You do it using Postman. We have a Postman collection for this.
There's also an SDK that's auto-generated. So if fetch calls is kind of too verbose or error prone, there's even a TypeScript SDK. So and that is actually just 2 lines of code. It is instantiate the engine instance and then call engine.erc721.mint2, and same parameters, but it's typed, which is kind of nice. But yeah, generally just really simple, straightforward way to just call your engine. It's a fetch call, and hopefully everyone's familiar enough with
There you go. Here's the TypeScript SDK that he was mentioning. Yeah, just engine dot what type of contract dot the thing you want to call.
Yeah, same pattern. First line is tell us you have an engine. The second line is tell us what you want engine to do. That's it.
That's it. And so let's run this. Always a little risky doing live demo, but I didn't actually build it in this moment, so hopefully it still works. So we'll go through the whole flow. We'll disconnect here. We'll connect our wallet. This is the compact mode of the thing, of the UI component. thirdweb.com. We continue. We get our, don't judge me from all the unread emails, or do. We're at a conference. No one reads emails at conferences. All right, so now we're connected. That's a Web 2 experience, right? You put in your email address, you hit the thing, you put in your one-time password, you're good.
Yeah, we've even had customers completely hide all the Web 3 parts, like no Web 3 wallets. The button doesn't say connect wallet, it says sign in. Everyone kind of knows they have to enter an email, enter a code. Like there's plenty of apps we've seen that don't even, the user doesn't even know it's a Web 3 app underneath.
And just to have this up, because this is my favorite part, we click claim.
So your wallet is 279. Okay.
This has been queued.
That's queued.
Now it's sent. And now it's mined. There it is, easy as that. And we have our latest NFT.
I guess let's just go to Snowtrace with your wallet. That might be the easiest way to check it.
Yeah, we can do that too. Let's open it up and go to the transaction. Takes us straight to Snowtrace, and we see the thing is done.
So 279 just received an NFT like a couple seconds ago, 34 seconds ago. Yeah.
Cool. That's it for the demo. I'll touch on the last slide here in kind of like the way I think about architecting these apps. The Fiat onboarding, we didn't do a demo here, but there's really two ways to approach this. One is kind of like the headless approach where you bring your own payment processor. Like you can sign up with Stripe, you get your full developer controls, you can implement your own risk models, do whatever you need. And then, on whatever event, like payment success, you can then call Engine. Right, easy enough to wait for webhook, and now you're hitting different an engine endpoint to mint or burn or transfer or whatever else you want to do. That's kind of approach one, BYO payment processor, and we have a template for that as well. We have a ton of templates. If you're interested in kind of the BYO architecture.
Yeah, and one of the good use cases of this is. We have an NFT checkout product, but sometimes people want full control over the payments piece. Specifically, they want to tune what types of payment methods they can accept, or they don't need they need a certain local payment method, or they just want to have full control and visibility over that. You can build your own NFT checkout product, and this is kind of the flow where the user provides payment method to their app's front end. The app front end submits card details to that app Stripe. That Stripe owns the app. That app owns their Stripe account. On payment, Stripe notifies their app's backend. The app backend calls Engine to mint, and then that user gets that NFT. So I probably even overcomplicated it with this diagram, but it's really just bring your own payments, call Engine. You can kind of see how Engine really fits into an automation pipeline, where Engine can be the thing that is triggered by something else, like a payment, or it can be the start of something where you trigger an NFT, and then on a webhook, you can send an email or update a database or whatnot.
Yeah, and just to mention the second, payment approach, we have a kind of all-in-one payment product as well. It's called ThirdWeb Pay. It's actually we've paused new approvals for that because we're relaunching it in about 2 weeks, and it's the all-in-one solution, right? So you go through like a KYB process with us, and then we give you, just like you saw that Connect Wallet component, it's just like one thing, you pass in a couple properties, same sort of thing. We just give you a component, and we also give you like all the pieces underneath the component if you want to like create your own custom flow. But we give it to you. You're no longer the merchant of record, so you pay like an extra couple percentage points on each transaction, but then you're no longer liable for chargebacks or any of that stuff. Like we take on that risk, or our org and the infrastructure takes on that risk, and that's it. Those are kind of really the three categories, right? User onboarding. How do I get money into the system, and then like how do I deploy and interact with the contract? And we've got that whole breadth, and then there's that's kind of really the tip of the iceberg, as Phil was mentioning. There's like a whole world of like RPCs and storage and data pinning and everything that lives underneath it that like most engineers don't really want to think about. You just want to use a thing that's out there. But if you have your own infra that you want to bring your own infra. Everything you can pass in and override what we give you by default. So that's it.
I'll pitch one more thing. Can you go to the blog for the Unified TypeScript SDK? So this just came out, I believe, earlier this week. So I would have colleagues very upset if I didn't at least mention it. But we rebuilt our entire TypeScript SDK from scratch with performance in mind. So as we've grown with the current SDK that's out there right now, we've noticed some growing pains around the interface and performance, especially because it is based on Ethers v5, which is kind of an older library by now. Built a whole new one. If you scroll down to the bullet points, I think there's, basically that. So the focuses are, it's a single package that does everything. You don't need to import these like sub packages anymore like you used to with the old SDK. It is tiny, 90% smaller footprint, and a lot of that has to do with, we're finally doing tree shaking right. Performance, we've seen, so my team has started putting it into Engine, and we've seen a 10x improvement in some of the latency times. And I can get into detail about why we're seeing that. But an even better thing is we're even seeing lower CPU and memory usage, which really helps with something like Engine, which is a backend service where suddenly now we have higher throughput now because calls are taking less CPU, so we can handle more of them. So just by upgrading the SDK, now we get higher throughput. And interoperable. So we know some of the more popular libraries are Ethers v5, Ethers v6, and VM. There's adapters for all of them. So if you already have a working app in one of these languages or libraries, you can gradually and incrementally adopt our SDK with adapters. So I want people to check it out. It's really nice.
Cool. That's it. Any questions for us? Happy. We're also just going to hang out afterwards and float around. I'd love to like talk to every person here and learn about what project you're working on. Engine right now is an invite-only product. It's been live since the summer. We've run millions, tens of millions of transactions through it. There's some really big names, some that I can mention, like Coinbase, Rolling Stone, Cool Cats. Cool Cats had like a day of Black Friday thing with Macy's where you like buy the Cool Cat, you scan the QR code, all powered by Engine. And a couple of names that of brands that everyone holds in their wallet that are doing drops to like millions and tens of millions of their customers in like late Q2, early Q3 that people in here will hear an announcement for probably soon. So it's a fully battle-tested solution, but it's still on an invite-only-ish type of, it's like a by request deployment. So anyone in here that wants an instance of Engine to like start playing around with, please hang around, let me know, I'll get some basic information from you, and then we can spin one up for you and give you. Right now we're charging, depending on like the size of your instance, from like $100 a month to like $300 a month, but we'll give you guys like enough free runway to get your projects going, especially if you want to use it for this hackathon.
Yep.
Cool. Any thoughts or questions for us before we turn the mics off and start floating? Yeah.
So like a tangential question, but I know you mentioned that there was account abstraction available.
Yeah.
So are we able to integrate external paymasters with
Absolutely. The question was, in terms of the account abstraction infrastructure that ThirdWeb offers, basically how composable is it? Can I bring in my own paymaster? And the answer is absolutely. Yeah, you can bring any part of our stack. You can use our like public infrastructure. We can spin up something dedicated to you, or you can bring your own. Any other questions? Cool. Well, thank you, Ava. Thanks to the great team here for hosting us. Sydney, Osman, not sure where they went. I'm sure they're out floating around, but thanks to the team for having us, and really looking forward to chatting with all the devs here. Thanks, folks.
Thank you all.